From the confines of a prison cell to the stress of everyday life, it's been said we're all doing time. So remember, it's always a thin line. Hello, everybody. This is Teacher William with Boss Man. Again, here we are with It's Always a Thin Line. And we're back with another interview with the captain. And this is part 2. So welcome back to It's Always a Thin Line. And today's topic, we're going to talk about unwritten rules. Unwritten rules, from both perspectives, from the convict's perspective and from the officer's perspective. From the convict's perspective, there is definitely a lot of unwritten rules. What about you, Captain? Is there a lot of unwritten rules?
There's a few unwritten rules. Majority of them has to do with use of force and inmate and staff relationship, disrespect and assault on an officer. So there's policies and procedures that we supposed to comply, but like the subject of this podcast, unwritten rules, we do what we have to do.
All right. What about you, boss man? Unwritten rules, quite a few, just a few?
I think for us as officers, it's different than the captain's perspective because we're on the floor. We have to cohabitate with the inmates, with you guys. So, if we make your day shitty, our day's going to be shitty. So yeah, there's unwritten rules that some officers follow, some officers don't. But we'll get more into that as we get into it. But I came up with this topic. I really thought it was very controversial. It's taboo. No one talks about it because it's one of those things like it's there. It's the pink elephant in the room, but you don't discuss it because of the repercussions of you speaking about it to someone and what can happen to you because you're violating certain things that shouldn't be violated. So I think this topic is great. I don't work there anymore. That's why I can speak about it sort of freely, I've discussed it with the captain before in depth, but we've agreed that, we won't mention names, we won't mention locations, and to protect ourselves, most of all, those individuals, because no matter what, we were and we still are in our heart law enforcement officers, no matter what we do, and we respect both sides, the inmates and the officers' points of views. So go ahead, Teacher Will, take it.
All right. Well, from the convict's point of view, pretty much every convict rule is unwritten because convicts aren't allowed to make rules, right? I mean, if you want to break it down legally, if you want to break it down according to any institution's rules, I mean, it specifically states, almost every handbook I ever read specifically stated that no convict, no inmate shall have authority over another. So any rules that any convicts come up with are always 100% unwritten. There's a great line in, I think it was maybe Shot Caller, or it might have been Felon, where, they ask him, hey, what's up? Why don't you do this? Or why don't you do that? And the guy tells him pretty plainly, you have your rules and the convicts have their rules and theirs are the ones that really matter. As a convict, I guess that's pretty much how I always saw it. I mean, you try your best to avoid the rule. I mean, breaking the rules, I guess, if that's your thing. Some convicts spend their time breaking the rules, there's really there's no reason not to break a rule. I mean, what's the worst is the hole. And for some, that's nothing, it's worth it. Whatever they're doing, it's worth it. But I would say the biggest introduction that I ever got to an unwritten rule was, I don't know, I had been in when you go in and you belong to a certain group. I didn't really belong to the group per se. I just got classified in there, and that's just the way it happened. They're not really allowed to school you down. They're not allowed to really, they'll talk to you. Your cellie will talk to you and they'll make general talk. but they're not allowed to give you any of those unwritten rules. They're not really allowed to, this is what we do. This is how we do it. This is when we go to shower. Nah, you're kind of just floating out there until somebody gives the clearance for you to get, schooled with the unwritten rules. So I have been there a little while, maybe a couple weeks, 2 weeks, and I moved from West Block. I moved from West Block to Alpine section in San Quentin. And I remember I went in with, there was already a guy there and everything was cool. I was just 18 years old, just straight out of high school. So just a little, little snot-nosed kid. So, and I brushed my teeth and I spit in the sink. And the dude told me very clearly, very plainly, like, hey, dude, don't spit in the sink. And I didn't know. So I asked him why. And because of the rules, the unwritten rules, which said that he couldn't school me until I had gotten cleared. He really couldn't explain that either. He just looked me dead in the eye and said, don't do it again. And the way he looked at me convinced me that it probably wasn't a good idea to do it again. And then a couple days passed by. I did get cleared. I went for burglary, so it was all good. And I remember when when they came, they brought me a little, some shower shoes and bar of soap and some shampoo and this and that, just to say, okay, everything's good, welcome to the family, if you will. And I remember when they gave me that, my cellie looked at the guys, the guys, in charge, if you will, and said, hey, is this dude cleared? And they were like, yeah, he's cleared. Thank God he's it was like I looked at him and he looked at me and I kind of thought I was in a world of trouble. And in a sense, I kind of was, because from that moment forward, as soon as those two dudes, he's like, look, little dude, sit down. We're going to talk. All right. This is how things are run around here. You don't spit in the sink. You courtesy flush, these are two big unwritten rules. Don't spit in the sink, courtesy flush. And then he just started breaking it down. Stop going to the showers with no chanclas on, you idiot. That's what he told me.
So where do you spit, in the toilet?
Yeah, you spit in the toilet. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, always, and you've got to flush the toilet while you spit in it, because if you just spit in it, it splashes up and things like that. And nobody wants to hear you spit. So yeah.
Hold on before you keep going. So when you use the bathroom.
Yeah. Drop one, flush one.
Okay. So when do you guys clean it? Like right away? Or is it like a Friday thing? I don't know. I've never.
It really depends on you and your cellies. But yeah, I mean, if you go to the bathroom, like you take a leak, you have to flush the toilet while you take a leak. You can't just pee in the toilet. That's an unwritten rule. There you go. And that's to stop the splatter, because there's splatter, right? So it's a hygienic thing. It's not a power trip. It's just hygiene. So you flush the toilet, but even then there's a rag right there. And you wipe the toilet even if you don't see anything, even if you didn't do anything, it doesn't matter. If your celly looking at you and you don't wipe that toilet, you're probably gonna have a problem. And then, yeah, generally speaking, most cells that I was in, Monday through Friday, it's cleaning. And based on seniority, the senior guy, they got Tuesday and Thursday, and the young buck or the little fish or whatever, which was generally me, you got Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and the other guy got Tuesday and Thursday. So, and yeah, every day you clean it, because remember, the toilet is your refrigerator too in some cases.
What?
Yeah, and the viewers need to understand that that's your home. That little room is your home, and you guys have to take care of it. You want to be clean. You want to stay away from any germs. So you use every single area of that cell to do your cooking, to do your workout, whatever it takes. So that's why you gotta respect each other inside that cell. And us officers gotta know that there's unwritten rules inside those cells. When you see the door closed and one inmate's out, maybe that other inmate is inside using the toilet, and we shouldn't come down on that inmate hanging out outside the cell. We still want to investigate, but there's something going on in there, and he's probably using the bathroom.
Yeah, it is 100% right. And but with regard to refrigerator, yeah, you take your sodas, you put it in a plastic bag. If you have a plastic bag, You probably don't because, you know, they want to avoid the pruno session. And then you put it in the toilet, and remember, the toilet, depending on where you're at, the toilet is your telephone. You know, you do the old suction 10 times on the steel toilet, and then you start yelling down, hey, and you start yelling down the pipe, you know. So, you know, and believe it or not, the good thing is, though, those toilets are stainless steel. So, I mean, they're built not to have bacteria and things grow on them, and people generally keep them really clean. So, you know, you generally don't have too hard of a time shoving your face in the toilet to talk to your neighbor. Um, but yeah, unwritten rules, they pretty much run the show. Every convict, and how those rules get explained to you depends on you, depends on your situation, depends on who you are. I mean, I was in a good position because I was able to, you know, I had people that were willing to pull me aside and talk to me. And I never really gotten a wreck for violating an unwritten rule. I never really gotten a wreck for that, because, you know, I followed the unwritten rules. I mean, why wouldn't you? So yeah, that's from a convict's perspective. Every rule is unwritten. And the only thing is, the consequence for breaking those unwritten rules is rather harsh almost every last single time. Very rarely you hear of like disciplines of breakdowns where they got to do 1,000 burpees, you know, okay, you know, that happens. But most disciplines I know end in some sort of violence, you know, so it's best just to keep to the rules. So, but let's hear now from, you know, the officer's perspective about some unwritten rules. Boss man.
Well, in accordance to what Captain was saying, he's absolutely correct. There are some officers, you know, you guys would call us robot cops. You guys would call us mall officer, mall cop, rent a cop, you know, who officers who went by the book and just broke everybody's balls for every single thing, you know. Before I keep going, I just want to say this is for entertainment purposes because we might have read them, like you said. Felon said a lot of the stuff, shows a lot of the stuff that's on the social media, media, TV. So with that being said, my MO or the MO of certain officers is as soon as they walk into the pod, hey, clotheslines are cool. You know how I run my ship. Sergeant, lieutenant, captain, chief, anybody comes in here, unit manager, whoever it may be, your shit comes down. If it's up and you don't take it down and you slip, that ain't my fault. So, I mean, you can attest to that, Teacher Will. When I came in, I always said it every single time. Hey, I'm here. Do what you got to do. Handle your business. You got a water bag to work out or a laundry bag that you're going to stuff your books in or your legal paperwork to do curls. It's all good. I know they're humans just like we are, but there's some
Yeah.
officers that just took it too hard.
And like, for example, that water bag, the trash bag that they use for weightlifting, you know, that's all they got in there is to watch TV, conversate, play games, and work out. What harm, in my eyes, what harm is it going to do just to allow them to work out and tell them, hey, when you're done, I want that bag. Physically, I want that bag. So, yeah, you got to remember that's their home. That some of them are there for years, some of them are there for months. Either way, that's their home. Give them a little space, as long as they don't violate, the rules and they don't hurt each other. You know, just like we say, unwritten rules. You know, do your workout. Give me the bag when you're done.
All right, since we're talking about unwritten rules, let's talk about the one unwritten rule that is the same for you and the same for the convicts. What is that unwritten rule, huh? We didn't see nothing. So let's talk about this for a second. But for real, let's talk about it. I see another convict doing something. You ask me, I didn't see nothing. And let's be real. You see an officer go in there and tune up a convict, and that convict writes one of them complaint forms. And, you know, the internal affairs comes over to you and says, hey, I noticed that you and Captain were on shift at the same time. This complaint says, boss man went in the room and binked this guy up. What you gonna say? I didn't see nothing. So I get this rule. I get why it is. And for the convicts, there's pretty much nothing that can be done for it. But I have a question. Then this is the
Go ahead.
question for you guys. The comment is it's only a bad officer, it's a couple of bad apples. But the response lately has been, okay, if it's only a couple of bad apples, how come the good apples don't say something to stop the bad apples? And that is the unwritten rule that convicts have and that officers have. And if you want to touch it, you can. If you say it's too hot, I understand. Go ahead.
Well, if you don't mind, boss man, I just gonna say one thing. If I witness something on
Yeah.
an inmate, I'm not gonna call him out in front of everybody. I'm gonna make sure somebody, for example, somebody from medical comes, gets him, pulls him out. I'll wait for him outside and I'll talk to him and I say, hey,
Okay.
you can't be doing that. And the next time I'm going to take discipline on you. So you get loose privileges. But I do my best not to embarrass the inmate or the detainee. Then you lose control of the whole situation. You pull them out, that inmate, that detainee is going to appreciate it and is probably going to say, you know what, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that again. And the same goes to the officer. I'm definitely not going to embarrass him in front of all the inmates and detainees. I'm going to pull him out and talk to him outside the hallway and let him know, hey, with a firm voice, I'm going to let him know, you can't be doing that. Don't let me find out you're doing that again. Policy is write him up. Policy is write the inmate up right away. You know what? It's hard enough to work in there. It's hard enough to live in there.
Yeah. All right. Right on. Hey, I feel you on that. That's okay. And boss man?
Well, on that same note, I've been in incidences where I've had inmates really pissed off at me. Uh, One guy got mad. I said on one of my podcasts previously, working out, is that he got mad and asked me for some ice 3 times. The third time I got in his face, I said, "Look, shut the fuck up. I've already asked the hallway officer, hey, is it clear? No." And he came back the third time, disrespecting me. Motherfucker, I need some ice. I went up to his face. I hate getting into people's comfort zone. That's not who I am. It puts me in jeopardy. But I went up to his face, his grill. And I said, "Look, motherfucker, shut the fuck up. I already asked twice. I've been nice to you. Walk the fuck away. Leave me alone. Let me do my job. When it's clear, I'll let you know." What happens? He tells the other partners. Next thing I know, I'm surrounded by 9 guys. And I looked up like, oh, damn. Luckily, the main shot caller saw, came over, asked what was going on. I didn't know nobody an explanation, but I told him, hey, I asked, I told him what's up. Have I ever disrespected you? No. Okay. So the unwritten rule part of it is they had an unwritten rule. I disrespected the homie. They had to back up the homie, even though I know what's going on. You have to do something. Now, once the shot caller stepped in and found out, hey, he was in the wrong, he looks at me and he says, hey, I'm going to take care of it. Don't worry about it. I got it. The response was, I don't know. I don't want to see. I'm off in 10 minutes. I don't give a shit how you handle it. No blood. Period. Is it right or wrong? I don't know. It's one of those unwritten rules where, you know what? Handle your business, take care of your people. He crossed the line. He needs to learn to respect. Period. Now, the point where an officer, if I see an officer cross the line where they have to do something to someone because someone disrespected them, I'm not a punk. I'm not going to leave that officer alone there in case something escalates and get out of control. And we've seen in videos on the social media where officers getting jumped and the other officer runs away.
Yeah.
You don't do that. I'm a ride or die. I don't care if there's 100 to 1. I'm taking down 4 or 5. So will I rat him out? No. Well, I check him. Hey, man, why do you put me in this situation? Of course. And I'll tell him, was it really necessary? Was it worth it? Because 9 times out of 10, it's probably not. A lot of guys have egos on both sides, and sometimes you do what you have to do to get your respect. So
Right
that's
on.
my take on it. Would I break up? No. Am I a punk? No. So
Well,
And
yeah,
I'm sorry, Teacher Will.
go ahead.
Just quickly, you mentioned shot caller, and for those viewers, shot caller is inmate inside that dorm, that pod, that unit that took it upon himself to dictate what goes on in there, feeds off the weak inmates, and basically bullies his way all the way to leadership. We all know as officers, staff, never to trust a detainee or inmate. Detainee inmate never in charge, never dictates what goes on. But let me tell you something. I was one that I will go in the pod, and I always try my best to make eye contact with the shot caller. And I knew who the shot caller was, but I always make eye contact with the shot caller, and we can communicate just by eyes. And if he needed to tell me information, I make sure that nobody sees when him and I talk. And both ways, that shot caller is not in charge, but we all know inside that unit, especially when the officer's not around or the officer has his back turned, we all know that shot caller is running the show in there. Like it or not, we know that they're running the show in there. And I always made it a habit when I made my rounds throughout the facility, I would make contact with each shot caller from each unit, and I would let him know what's going on today. I don't want no trouble. I don't want no disrespect. If you have to talk to one of your other inmates, get out of line, you guys handle it. But make sure everything's legit in there. Unwritten rules. I used the shot caller for my benefit to keep and the viewers might say, well, you got an officer in there. Well, you know what? Believe it or not, the shot caller did a better job sometimes on maintaining peace in there and keeping the pod clean, because we all know on the weekends the football games come on, and if they get out of line and they disrespect my officer, or they don't keep the dorm clean, the pod clean, it's going to be a boring weekend. So unwritten rule, I used the shot caller for my benefit. I never gave him anything that violated rules and policies of the facility, but I will listen to him. And if he needed something, I will expedite it as long as everything's legit. If he needed the toilet paper and he had no toilet paper, I make sure the officer gets it for him in time, just because he's working for me.
One thing I noticed a difference between immigration and state. Obviously immigration is a different whole ball of wax, but my understanding in state, now I was never anybody at any time. I was just another convict doing time, but it was an unwritten rule. You didn't mention the shot callers. Matter of fact, you didn't necessarily even know exactly who they were. I mean, you might have had an idea, but you knew whoever spoke to you had the authority to do it. But yeah, the main reason for that is when I was in state, when I was in California, we had things called reps, and each ethnicity had a rep, an official rep, like they were recognized by the administration of the prison. The only thing was, those reps weren't real shot callers. 9 times out of 10, they were just, they were somebody put up. Hey, dude, it's your turn. And the reason being, and I never understood administrations that did this. The reason being is that when something happened, the administration side, the white guy, the black guy get in a fight, boom, beat each other up, right? The administration would call in the white rep and the administration would call in the black rep and say, hey, man, is there something going on? And of course, they're going to say, no, there's nothing going on. Everything's great. And then when they do the unlock, there's all hell breaks loose. And at that moment, that's when administration goes and they snatch the black rep and they snatch the white rep and they throw their butts in the hole, right? So obviously nobody ever really wants that rep title. And 9 times out of 10, and that's what I noticed when I went to immigration, people were openly, they were the shot caller, if you will, for the pod or whatever, openly. And I was like, wow, okay, these guys are kind of crazy, right? Yeah, because I used to think, dude, they're just asking to get locked up. I mean, anytime that term is really, or at least when I was in California State between, I guess it was 1997 and 2003, I guess. And then I went and did 5 more years in immigration. But when I was there in California, I mean, yeah, you didn't even mention the people, you didn't really meet with, because everybody's looking. And when the crap goes down, they're the ones that are going to take the heat. And plus they will snatch you off the yard just for being a shot caller. I mean, you don't even have to do anything. If they can get enough evidence to prove that you're calling some shots on a yard, they'll just snatch you up for that alone. And the not least is the validation. I mean, that's another point for getting validated. So I don't want to step too much in that one because I didn't never know too much about that and I was never that. But yeah, so the unwritten rules in prison, I guess, protect. They keep at least for the convict, the unwritten rules keep hygiene, keep order. To a certain extent, they keep order. And they really keep things, I'd say they're necessary for convicts. Unwritten rules are very, very necessary, especially in that type of environment. Any closing thoughts on unwritten rules for you, Captain, and as an officer?
At my level, management, and in my position that I held, Captain, I really had to be careful with unwritten rules. I leaned on my officers to take care of business, and I'm just going to leave it as that, But the safety of my officers came first. The safety of inmates, the security of the facility. That was the most important thing in my heart and my thoughts during the shift. So the boss man, he had a lot more unwritten rules encounters, and whatever they share with me, I will back them up to the best of my ability. That's about it.
All right, boss man. Any closing thoughts on unwritten rules?
Does unwritten rules exist? Of course. Am I glad inmates have them? Yes. As the captain said, unfortunately, most institutions believe we run the house. We technically do. But they're the ones that keep the order. They keep the structure. They keep each other in line. And if a beatdown is a beatdown, hey, so be it,
All right, guys. Well, that was Unwritten Rules with Boss Man, Teacher William, and the Captain. And thank you very much for tuning in this time. And we hope you give us a like, give us a follow, and check us out next time. Remember, always show love, always show respect, and never forget, it's always a thin line.
Peace.